in the backseat of a Cadillac.
They were adored by millions, praised as legends, and worshipped on stage. But offstage, they were nightmares, arrogant, manipulative, and downright cruel. These are the 21 worst jerks in country music history. Stars you once loved, but probably shouldn't have. Nashville tried to protect their image, but the truth is out. From toxic feuds to shocking betrayals, we're exposing the country icons who left a trail of destruction behind the fame. Blake Shelton, America's favorite cowboy, until the cameras turned off. With his charming smile, quick wit, and undeniable talent, Blake Shelton became a household name, both as a country hitmaker and as the beloved coach on The Voice. Fans adored his laid-back humor and good old boy persona. But away from the stage and TV lights, many insiders tell a very different story, one of ego, backstabbing, and an industry veteran who's burned more bridges than he's built. In the early 2000s, Shelton was known for his sharp tongue and brash behavior, especially when things didn't go his way. But as his fame grew, so did the complaints. Crew members on his early tours described him as charming in public, cruel in private. One former sound technician recalled being screamed at for a technical issue that was entirely out of his control, only to be fired the next morning without explanation. Behind the scenes at The Voice, whispers of arrogance and diva-like behavior began surfacing by season 5. According to a former production assistant, Shelton often ignored producers' direction, clashed with other coaches off camera, and insisted on having the final say in song choices for his team, even when it hurt the contestants. He didn't coach, the source claimed. He controlled. Fellow artists have also hinted at tension with Blake. Miranda Lambert's fans still point to vague but pointed lyrics in her post-divorce songs, painting a picture of betrayal and emotional cruelty. And when Blake quickly moved on to date Gwen Stefani, critics noted his tendency to spotlight the relationship for publicity, while casually dismissing the pain left in his wake. Even his public persona, once considered lovable, has shown signs of wear. He's come under fire for offensive tweets, some of which included racist, sexist, or homophobic overtones. Though he later deleted them and issued half-hearted apologies, many felt the damage was done, and that his real personality had slipped through the cracks. To his diehard fans, Blake Shelton is still the charming rogue of country music. But for those who've worked behind the curtain, he's remembered as someone who weaponized his fame, demanded loyalty without giving it, and maintained his likability by letting others take the fall. Beneath the jokes and the denim, a man who played the nice guy card so well, you never saw the storm coming. Bạn có muốn tôi tiếp tục với nhân vật từ Faith Hill không? Faith Hill, America's sweetheart, with a not-so-sweet reputation. To millions, Faith Hill was the golden girl of country music, graceful, elegant, and blessed with one of the most powerful voices of her generation. With hits like Breathe and This Kiss, she became the soundtrack to an entire era of country pop crossover. But talk to people who've worked behind the scenes with her, and a far more complex and at times troubling portrait emerges. Faith wasn't just a perfectionist. She was known for being unyielding. Former producers have described her studio sessions as emotionally exhausting. She often dismissed others' noels, creative ideas, and demanded total control over every element, from vocal mixes to wardrobe decisions for background vocalists. If something wasn't done her way, one producer recalled, you were either ignored or replaced. Touring musicians described an atmosphere of high-pressure tension. While she wasn't openly abusive, Hill was said to be cold, calculating, and quick to cut off anyone who disappointed her, even for minor mistakes. A former backup singer admitted she once lost her job over a wardrobe color that clashed with Faith's outfit on stage. It didn't matter that it wasn't my call, she said. It mattered that I looked wrong next to her. Her famous marriage to Tim McGraw was often praised in the media as the perfect country couple. But insiders claimed that Faith tightly managed the public image of their relationship. When rumors of infidelity or creative disagreements surfaced, Hill reportedly worked behind the scenes to suppress stories or shift blame to others. She ran their empire like a CEO, one close source said, and she didn't tolerate disobedience. Faith's interactions with other female country artists also raised eyebrows. While she maintained a supportive image on camera, younger singers quietly accused her of being dismissive or cold during private interactions. "It's not that she was rude," one rising star shared. "It's that you got the feeling she didn't want you anywhere near her spotlight." Though Faith Hill's career was built on beauty, grace, and vocal power, her offstage demeanor often told a harsher tale. Many who entered her world felt more like employees than collaborators, expected to serve her vision without question and exit silently when no longer needed. She may have sung about love and joy, but for many behind the curtain, working with Faith Hill felt like standing in the shadow of someone who smiled for the cameras and ruled with an iron will when they were off. Jason Aldean, the hitmaker who couldn't stay out of trouble. Jason Aldean rose to fame on the back of explosive live shows and bro country anthems like Dirt Road Anthem and She's Country. With his rugged voice and alpha male stage presence, he became a staple of 2010's country radio. But while fans sang along to his hits, many insiders were watching a different story unfold, one of unchecked arrogance, tone-deaf decisions, and a reputation for acting like the rules didn't apply to him. From early on in his career, Aldean developed a reputation among crew members and industry professionals as dismissive and entitled. Sound engineers and backstage staff reported that he often refused sound checks, skipped rehearsals, and showed up late without warning, then blamed others when things didn't go smoothly. He didn't treat people like teammates, one former lighting director said. He treated them like servants. But the most infamous stain on Aldean's reputation came in 2012, when he was caught on camera publicly kissing American Idol contestant Brittany Kerr, while still married to his first wife. Rather than laying low, Aldean attempted damage control through vague public statements, blaming too much alcohol while dodging any real accountability. Fans were divided. Many turned away in disappointment. Others excused the behavior. But behind the scenes, trust in Aldean took a serious hit. Then came the controversies that exposed an even darker side. Over the years, Aldean has been called out for supporting political and social views that many saw as divisive. From wearing blackface at a Halloween party, dressed as Lil Wayne no less, to defending lyrics and merchandise some labeled as racially insensitive, Aldean repeatedly found himself at the center of firestorms. Each time, he denied wrongdoing, never offering a real apology, only justification. Those who've worked closely with Aldean describe a man surrounded by yes men, unwilling to be challenged. One former bandmate said, "The minute you questioned a choice or told him something was a bad idea, you were on the way out." Even within the industry, his reputation became that of someone you didn't confront because it simply wasn't worth the fallout. Today, Jason Aldean continues to top charts and sell out stadiums. But to many insiders, he's not just a star. He's a cautionary tale. A talented artist who let success blur the lines between confidence and cruelty, between free speech and reckless provocation. In public, he's the all-American everyman, but behind closed doors, he's been called something else entirely, the guy who never says sorry because he thinks he never has to. Eric Church, the lone wolf who burned the pack. Eric Church calls himself the outsider, and it's not just a branding choice, it's a mindset. With his signature sunglasses, defiant lyrics, and rock-infused country sound, Church carved a space all his own in Nashville. He built a cult-like fan base that admired his no-compromise attitude and gritty authenticity. But behind the scenes, many say his rebellion wasn't noble, it was narcissistic. And working with him, a professional nightmare. From the start, Church rejected the polished traditions of mainstream country. He refused to follow formulas, challenged radio programmers, and even told award shows to shove it. While this gave him a reputation as an artistic purist, it also made him nearly impossible to collaborate with. Producers described him as obsessive in the studio, demanding dozens of takes, rewriting entire sections mid-recording, and ignoring input from engineers and musicians unless it matched his vision exactly. He didn't want feedback, one session player recalled. He wanted obedience. On tour, things got worse. Eric was known for canceling rehearsals last minute, berating crew over minor details, and maintaining a near-total emotional distance from his band. Multiple team members reported that they could go days, sometimes weeks, without a single word from him, unless something went wrong. He was the kind of boss you feared, Not respected, said one former sound tech. But his most controversial move came in 2022 when he abruptly canceled a sold-out concert in San Antonio so he could attend a college basketball game. Fans were furious, not just at the cancellation, but at the casual way Church announced it. There was no apology, no rescheduling, just the implication that his priorities came first, always. Even die-hard supporters struggled to defend him. Other artists also found him difficult. He once implied that country duos like Florida Georgia Line were manufactured, dismissing their success with a sneer. He publicly criticized Taylor Swift, hinting that she didn't belong in the genre. And when Miranda Lambert beat him for Album of the Year at the 2014 CMAs, insiders said he left the venue before the show ended, furious that real music didn't win. Despite the turbulence, Church's fans remain loyal, seeing him as a truth teller in a sea of sellouts. But for many inside the industry, he's viewed differently. As a man who mistook stubbornness for integrity, whose contempt for compromise masked a deep need to control, and whose outsider image was less about authenticity and more about keeping people at arm's length. Miranda Lambert, the firebrand who burned more than just bridges. Miranda Lambert built her career on being the tough girl of country music. With songs like Gunpowder and Lead and Kerosene, she became a symbol of female empowerment wrapped in Southern grit. But behind the blazing lyrics and unapologetic attitude, many insiders and former collaborators say Lambert's fire often scorched the people around her, turning admiration into anxiety and support into silence. Those who've toured with Miranda describe her as brilliant on stage, but emotionally volatile behind it. One former crew member said, "You never knew what mood she'd be in. One day, she's your best friend. The next, she's yelling at you in front of the entire staff for something you didn't even do." Others echoed that sentiment, calling her exhausting to work for and completely unpredictable. Lambert's reputation for feuding is no secret. Her high-profile split from Blake Shelton became tabloid fodder. But it wasn't just the divorce. It was how she handled it. Rather than take the high road, Miranda seemed to lean into the bitterness, lacing her lyrics with jabs and giving sharp, passive-aggressive interviews. When Shelton moved on with Gwen Stefani, Lambert's fans praised her for staying true. But insiders claimed she was anything but. One close friend of the couple said, she was more interested in winning the breakup than healing from it. The real turning point in her public image came in 2019 when she reportedly dumped a salad on a woman during a restaurant altercation in Nashville. Yes, a salad. Witnesses say Lambert became enraged after overhearing a conversation that she didn't like, then escalated the situation in full view of stunned diners. Her camp downplayed it, but the message was clear. Miranda Lambert had a temper, and she wasn't afraid to let it fly. Musicians who've worked with her say she often played favorites, pitted members of her team against one another, and would ghost collaborators who fell out of favor without warning or explanation. A talented songwriter described writing sessions with her as high-stakes emotional combat, where any disagreement could lead to a dead-end relationship. Even fans have started to notice the cracks. Meet-and-greet events have turned tense, with reports of Lambert ignoring attendees, offering cold responses, or rushing through without eye contact. Recently, she made headlines for scolding fans mid-performance for taking selfies, turning a joyful moment into a public shaming. To many, Miranda Lambert is a country queen who speaks her mind and takes no prisoners. But to those behind the spotlight, she's a storm that doesn't just pass through. It leaves damage long after the music fades. The rebel who became a wrecking ball. Kid Rock never wanted to play by Nashville's rules, and for a while, that worked in his favor. Blending country, rock, and rap into a genre-defying spectacle, he built a loyal fan base and carved out a lane for misfits who didn't fit the Music Row mold. But somewhere along the way, the rebellion became self-destruction. And instead of being remembered as a maverick, Kid Rock cemented his legacy as one of the most toxic figures in country music history. From the very beginning, Kid Rock wore controversy like a badge of honor. His lyrics were raw, profane, and often offensive. But what turned off insiders wasn't just the music, it was the man. On tour, crew members described him as erratic and explosive. One former manager claimed there were no rules. He'd show up drunk, scream at the staff, cancel rehearsals, or vanish for hours, then blame everyone else for being unprepared. And while his fans ate up the bad boy image, those who worked with him behind the scenes found it exhausting. Collaborators said he rarely took creative input seriously unless it came from someone he already respected, and respect often meant total agreement with whatever he said. The list of public incidents is staggering. In 2007, he was arrested after a violent brawl at a Waffle House. In 2019, he launched a drunken, profanity-laced tirade against Oprah Winfrey during a bar performance, prompting widespread backlash. And in 2021, he came under fire yet again for using a homophobic slur on stage. Each time, instead of expressing remorse, Kid Rock doubled down, mocking cancel culture and accusing the media of targeting him. His relationship with the country music industry has always been strained. While artists like Hank Williams Jr. embraced him, many in Nashville kept their distance. Award shows stopped inviting him. Collaborators quietly cut ties. And even radio stations, once eager to spin his crossover hits, slowly phased him out. Some of his defenders argue that he's simply unfiltered or old school, but others see it for what it is, a pattern of behavior rooted in arrogance and fueled by entitlement. He's not misunderstood. He's unaccountable. Today, Kid Rock still sells tickets and headlines festivals. But to many in the industry, he's not a rebel with a cause. He's a cautionary tale. A man who mistook chaos for authenticity, and whose refusal to evolve turned him from an outlaw into an outcast. Alan Jackson, the quiet giant with an iron fist. Alan Jackson is often hailed as a savior of traditional country music, a towering figure who brought back steel guitars and Southern storytelling at a time when Nashville was veering pop. With his signature mustache, tall frame, and smooth twang, Jackson looked and sounded like the perfect gentleman. But according to those who worked closest with him, his calm exterior often masked a personality that was rigid, demanding, and emotionally unavailable. In the public eye, Jackson rarely caused a stir. He didn't rant in interviews or feud with fellow stars. But behind the scenes, many insiders say he exerted quiet, almost clinical control over everything and everyone in his orbit. Bandmates who toured with him for years spoke of a man who rarely spoke a kind word and never offered praise. He ran the tour like a military operation, said one longtime crew member. You did your job, or you were gone. There was no warmth. Producers also recall how Jackson insisted on perfection in the studio, sometimes re-recording an entire song just because a backing instrument was slightly off-tempo. He was obsessed with control, one engineer noted, but not in a passionate way, in a cold, mechanical way. It wasn't about art, it was about dominance. While Jackson never made headlines for scandal, his reputation within the industry was often described as intimidating. Younger artists who idolized him were said to be met with indifference, or worse, thinly veiled disdain. One up-and-coming singer recalled approaching Jackson backstage to introduce himself, only to be told by a handler he's not in the mood for talking. Word spread fast. Alan Jackson didn't mentor, didn't engage, and didn't forgive slights, real or perceived. Even fellow A-listers weren't immune to his judgment. He once walked out during a live awards show performance by Beyoncé, criticizing the inclusion of non-country acts in what he believed should be a pure country space. While some applauded his purism, others saw it as gatekeeping, an unwillingness to evolve, dressed up as tradition. To many, Alan Jackson remains a legend, and deservedly so. But for those who stood in his shadow, the image of the quiet Southern gentleman rings hollow. They remember a man who never raised his voice, but still left people walking on eggshells. A king of country who ruled with silence, not grace. Brantley Gilbert, the outlaw who couldn't be tamed. Brantley Gilbert built his image on rebellion. With tattoos, muscle cars, and a voice soaked in gravel and grit, he was marketed as the modern outlaw of country music, a man who lived fast, sang hard, and bowed to no one. But behind the bravado, many insiders say Gilbert's refusal to compromise crossed the line from authentic to abusive. And while his fans embraced the wildness, his colleagues often paid the price for it. Gilbert has long been open about his struggles with addiction and his efforts at recovery, but those who've toured or recorded with him say sobriety didn't erase the underlying issue: control. He was notorious for lashing out during rehearsals, berating bandmates for messing up the vibe, and demanding changes to entire set lists on a whim, sometimes minutes before going on stage. Working with him was like stepping into a live wire, said one former crew member. You didn't know if you were going to get the cool Brantley or the one who made everyone miserable. Producers described recording sessions where Gilbert would disappear for hours, then return agitated and combative, demanding that songs be completely rewritten. If an engineer offered feedback or a collaborator suggested an idea he didn't like, he'd either shut down or explode. One producer walked off a project entirely, calling Gilbert unmanageable and emotionally erratic. Gilbert's public persona as a God-fearing patriot has also raised eyebrows, especially when paired with his history of aggressive, sometimes threatening behavior. He's been accused by insiders of intimidating openers on tour, demanding total subservience from opening acts, and even preventing them from using certain lighting rigs or stage space. He made it clear, said one up-and-coming singer, it was his show, and you were just lucky to be near it. Though he rarely makes headlines for scandals, Gilbert's silence isn't necessarily peace, it's strategy. Industry insiders say he avoids interviews unless he has total control over the questions. He refuses to attend events where he isn't the center of attention. And even among his management team, turnover has reportedly been high, with sources citing burnout and a toxic work environment. To his fans, Brantley Gilbert is a badass who speaks his truth and never plays nice. But to those backstage, he's the kind of artist who confuses intensity with intimidation and demands loyalty in an environment where no one feels safe enough to give it freely. Kacey Musgraves. The cool girl who turned cold Kacey Musgraves rose to stardom as the darling of the country music counterculture, a breath of fresh air in a genre long dominated by tradition and conformity. With sharp-witted lyrics, fashion-forward flair, and bold takes on taboo topics, she won Grammys, headlines, and praise for breaking the mold. But behind the glitter and glow, many insiders claim Kacey's image as the enlightened outsider comes with a hidden cost. Coldness, condescension, and a pattern of quietly cutting down anyone who doesn't fit her narrative. Studio insiders described Kacey as hyper-controlling during the creative process. While many artists push for quality, those who've worked with her say she often ignored co-writers, dismissed engineers, and shot down any production idea that didn't originate from her or her inner circle. She pretends to be collaborative, said one former session musician, but it's all curated. If you challenge her, you're politely frozen out. Touring professionals echoed a similar sentiment. Though she's rarely explosive or confrontational, her silence is weaponized. Crew members said they'd go entire tours without hearing more than a handful of words from her. One technician recalled being let go without explanation after 3 years of work, replaced by someone closer to her personal brand. She's not mean, he said. She's just ice. Perhaps most damaging, though, has been her role in shaping narratives within the country music community. While praised publicly for calling out hypocrisy and exclusion, some younger artists claim Kacey wasn't as inclusive as she appeared. If you didn't fit the aesthetic or politics she approved of, you didn't get invited, one aspiring country pop singer noted. She became the gatekeeper she claimed to be fighting against. Her divorce from Ruston Kelly was also met with scrutiny, not for its occurrence, but for the carefully crafted messaging around it. The breakup was branded as graceful and evolved, but sources close to the couple said the truth was far messier. Rumors of emotional detachment, passive manipulation, and image-first thinking swirled behind closed doors. Even among fans, a subtle shift has begun. Meet and greets feel more like photo ops than connections. Autograph sessions are tightly controlled. Social media, once personal and playful, is now heavily managed. What was once raw now feels rehearsed. To the public, Kacey Musgraves is the visionary rewriting country music's rules. But for many in the wings, she's not a rebel. She's a strategist, and the farther she climbs, the more people she quietly leaves behind. Billy Ray Cyrus, the father figure who burned his own legacy. When Achy Breaky Heart exploded in Munchin Time Dine High, Billy Ray Cyrus became a pop country sensation overnight. With his mullet, denim swagger, and family man image, he was embraced as the friendly face of a new era in country music. But as years passed and the fame faded, a darker story began to emerge. One of manipulation, betrayal, and a man who ultimately weaponized his image and his family to stay in the spotlight. From the very beginning, Billy Ray's rise rubbed many Nashville insiders the wrong way. Critics called him a one-hit wonder, and colleagues whispered about his ego. "He acted like the king of country after one song," said a former producer. And when the hits stopped, he started looking for someone to blame. His relationship with the industry soured quickly. Producers complained about his refusal to listen, while tour managers recalled frequent last-minute cancellations and an unwillingness to share credit with songwriters or collaborators. One longtime guitarist said working with him felt like walking on a tightrope. He was either charming or terrifyingly unpredictable. But it was Billy Ray's personal life that really began to raise eyebrows. As the father of Miley Cyrus, he carefully constructed an image of the supportive, grounded dad. But as Miley's fame exploded, insiders say Billy Ray became increasingly controlling behind the scenes, managing her image, inserting himself into her projects, and blurring the line between parenting and profiteering. When Miley began her dramatic shift away from her Disney persona, many expected Billy Ray to step back. Instead, he doubled down, frequently appearing in interviews to either defend or distance himself, depending on which way the media winds blew. It was never about Miley, one former PR agent claimed. It was always about Billy Ray protecting his legacy, even if it meant throwing his daughter under the bus. In recent years, his highly publicized divorce and sudden marriage to a much younger woman sparked a wave of criticism, especially as rumors circulated that he had become estranged from multiple family members, including Miley. Social media posts suggested fractures, and former friends claimed Billy Ray had become paranoid, reclusive, and obsessed with staying relevant. To casual fans, Billy Ray Cyrus remains a nostalgic name, a symbol of 90s fun and fatherly charm. But to those behind the curtain, he's remembered less for his music and more for how quickly he abandoned people when the cameras stopped rolling. In the end, the real heartbreak wasn't just in the song. It was in the legacy he couldn't protect because he was too busy protecting himself.